or Ankita?
Nikita.
Ankita.
Yeah. Perfect.
Ankita is in the house. Perfect timing, perfect intro. How are you doing today?
I'm pretty good, Millie. Super excited just about, kind of everything that is coming together. Also, it's wild to me that while we're recording this, we're already almost into August. Like, I don't know what the year went.
Right?
Yeah, but just really excited about a lot of things that I have been working on, like kind of hopefully materializing. So, all good.
Yes. Well, let's get into it. I was like kind of struggling to be like, where do we start when I was looking through our kind of like shared notes because there are so many different directions we can take this. But I think it would be um, near illegal not to start with the what sounds like the most extraordinary story ever. So like you were working in VC in startups and then you took a kind of an extraordinary turn. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I had been working for about 3 years. So I started my career in venture and then worked in analytics. And to be honest, there came a point where just like my job in analytics, I felt like I could do it while I was asleep. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like it's so nice sometimes to be able to coast in your role. And it had been really hard and challenging for me to even get to that point where I felt comfortable. But there was just a point where I was like, well, what is this for? Like, it just felt like I was working for companies that were already doing well, that just wanted to make more money. And like, that's sort of like the whole gripe I have with consulting. And one thing that was really important to me and had been really important to me my whole life was my spiritual path. And so I decided just to take a break and go work at the ashram, which is up in the Catskills. And it was the most transformative. I thought I would go for a year, and then go to business school. I ended up staying 3.5 years. It is a proper organization. It is the most well-run organization you will ever see. And so I kind of was in the marketing department for a while, running marketing, running large community calls with like hundreds of people, creating materials, all of that. And then I was the head of the music department, which was like just the most fun. I'm not a musician. I am like, but just for fun, like not like them. But it was like basically having strategy and ops because that's their biggest product. And then I went to business school, and that was a rude awakening because I had come from this like very protected bubble where everyone is lovely and loves each other and is focused on the greater good of humanity. And then I was going to business school where, in some ways, it is all about how much money you can make after business school. And so eventually, after that, I ended up working at a really awesome organization that funds climate innovations, amongst other kind of can just relate it to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. But I worked primarily on climate, so that was my very squiggly path to.
That's incredible. And when you think, how do you think that kind of experience shaped you, in particular, how you approach your own work today and how you even see like the wider economy kind of working and moving in the future?
So I'm gonna start with a sort of unusual takeaway, which is that sometimes when our souls really want something, it's really easy to talk ourselves out of it for the practicality. But there's a time in life to do things. Like now I'm married, I have a child. Like I couldn't have gone spent 3.5 years living in the Catskills making, like it's because I mean, obviously like now I have to prioritize, like I need to pay my mortgage and I need to save for retirement and things like that. So it's just like really leaning into that, and realizing that like when you fill your soul, like everything sort of else falls in place. And it is sometimes about, okay, like I need to be practical about how long can I do this for. But really, the like for me, my biggest personal commitment has been to work for people that I love working with, in environments I love working and causes I feel passionately about. And so to me, ever since I graduated business school, I committed to working at the intersection of profits and purpose. And I mean that both in, the job that I had, but also now I do a lot of things very much as a generalist. Like I am an executive coach working with founders and founding teams, but I also internally work on strategy, sort of almost as their fractional chief of staff, if you will. Like that's like the best, closest, I think, position I can come up with. And as long as a company is operating at the intersection of profits and purpose and they really care about the world and the impact they have on the world, and also about the people that work, kind of at all levels of the chain, like everything from the sourcing to who works for them to who they serve, I am super happy to work with them.
I want to dig into this because I think we hear it a lot. We hear it often that people are, or companies say that they're purpose driven or they're mission driven. And it's kind of become a word like, well, what does that mean? And how are you being held accountable to this purpose or to this mission? So, if I guess a few threads we could go down here. My first is if a company wants to be purpose driven or mission driven, what are some ways that you've seen that they can actually do that in practice and it's not just some values that live on a Notion doc?
Yeah, I mean, just to that point, like on the very simple level, is like actually making decisions that fulfill that ultimate vision of the world. And one of the easiest ways I think to do it is to think about like, okay, like what is the closest transformation in the world that I want to see? Like, for example, like a super AI tech company could say like, we're like really wanting access, easy access, like we're creating a company that is tech for good. So say like, okay, like what does that mean at every level of decision making? Like how are we hiring the people that fulfill this vision and this mission? How are we giving access to communities and to people that may not have access to it? How are we training them? How are we giving access to each other? So it really comes into effect at every level of decision making, and it just requires a little bit of intentionality.
Do you think that every company should be a mission driven company?
Yes, I do. And this is my very spiky point of view. But I think that it doesn't need to be called mission driven because sometimes mission driven is almost associated with nonprofits, which we can talk about that. I've worked at many nonprofits. You know, but I think it's more about being anchored in your values. And the one super easy way of doing it, and it's imperfect, but it's just a way of doing it, is even looking at like the UN Sustainable Development Goals and saying like, are there any of these 13 goals that like we fulfill? Like, are we making the world better in any of these ways? Like, and starting there and then being intentional about how you're thinking about your business and creating that change and creating that KPI that can measure how close you are to making a difference in the world.
Okay, amazing. And then from like the employee level or the team level, let's say I'm an employee and I want my company to become more purpose driven. Maybe let's say they're really profit driven, but as an employee, it means a lot to me for them to become more purpose driven. Do you have any advice or stories that you've seen people like kind of successfully pitch this and have like leadership buy in and perhaps the company becomes more purpose driven?
Yeah, honestly, I sort of started this way too. Like, let me tell you a story. So, when I was working at one of the companies, we had a service day, and in the service day, you kind of go do whatever you want. Like, you serve at the soup kitchen, you do whatever. And the company had picked two projects, one of which was painting a school in an underserved neighborhood. And so we recruited everyone to come, took the day off. Like you can imagine, like this is a consulting firm, there's like 200 employees, how many hours that is of people's time, how much material that is to paint the school. So we went did that, painted the school, felt really good about it, looked great. There were a bunch of murals, like really like thinking about how can kids engage and learn with this painting. And then obviously some of it was just like blank walls. Um, on Monday, when we went to debrief, we found out that another consulting firm had gotten the day after us and painted the same school. Yes. And it's because, we're working with an underserved community, which are very resource strapped. And they potentially talked to two different people at the school, and both said, "Oh, we really need the school to be painted," and both said yes. You would think that when the second group of people showed up, they would have been like, "This looks good. Like, we don't need to paint over this."
But they painted over it.
Yes. So because two different companies had
Yikes.
so yeah, and so I think that that was my first lesson in, even when companies want to do good, sometimes they're looking for an easy way to make an impact, which I'm not saying that painting a school isn't worth doing. Obviously that is very much a cause that you like. It's sort of like the easiest level of impact, like you see the transformation. But I think what came out of it for me was a restructuring, and me and three of my co-workers at the time and friends got together and created a second company inside of our company, and started really thinking about corporate social responsibility and what that means, and how we can better allocate both people's time and direct dollars into thinking about affecting the community we live in. And so I just think as an employee, there's always that opportunity to think about what skills do we have as employees, and how do we talk to our company, because yes, sometimes it is totally about the company, but sometimes it's even getting the buy-in to have company time where you can be working on a project that's like benefiting the world.
Okay, this is fantastic. So I'm getting quite a lot of great tips around the purpose.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how do you think about making the world better while also making a lot of money? How do you think about that balance of also making sure that the profit is there?
Yeah, I mean, and that is something that I have been working on. It's a work in progress for me. And I think I have another story for you. So one time I was leading a couple into a thought experiment on healing their relationship with money. And I asked them each to list who they thought of when they thought of like a stupidly wealthy person. And it was really interesting because one of them wrote down, like the tech bros of the world, like Musk and Zuckerberg. And the other one wrote down Oprah and Sarah Blakely and all of these other incredible leaders. And I just think that not every company needs to directly do, like, you are as sustainable and as good, and like you treat employees fairly, you treat the supply chain well, you're good to the environment, you recycle, all of that is a given. But sometimes it's also what you do with the wealth once you create it. And I think of like someone like a Sarah Blakely, where she gives back so much, she helps other entrepreneurs directly with, like, kind of investing in them, no equity money that she gives them, with mentorship hours, with opening your connections, with just, so I just think about it as like, even it starts with us healing our relationship with what we think of wealth, and creating companies that can make a massive impact, because then you also have more to work with and more to play with. Whereas if you're only starting with, I'm just going to do good, then it's really easy to slip into being a nonprofit. And then in my mind, the nonprofit model is really messed up because, having worked with partnerships in it, sometimes it's really difficult to justify why the allocation that they've given you to work on a budget should also be distributed to the people that work for the nonprofit, because it almost seems like you're taking away from the eventual beneficiary.
That makes a lot of sense. It's such an interesting kind of framework or model to think about, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about this with like my work with Generalist World. It was particularly sparked after I read this book, Profit First, which is quite popular, quite famous. And when I
Yeah.
read it, I was like, okay, I get it, I get what they're saying. But for me, when I kind of looked at my triangle of like profit, impact, and like life, I realized that I wanted it to be life, profit, impact. For the reason that life, I only have one. That's a non-negotiable. Like that's the thing that I must prioritize. That's the top thing on my
Yeah,
list. And then profit, because without profit, I simply cannot have the impact. And I have like played
exactly.
that triangle for like years, trying to get it right. And for a long time, I was like really optimizing for the impact and having no life, or optimizing for the impact and having no profit. So for me, it's life, profit, impact.
And it's so funny you said that because like the three I think of are profit, purpose, and presence, which is very similar.
Mm,
But yeah, I think that sometimes even like the stage of life we're in will change that. But I totally agree with you that like without having enough profits, you cannot make an impact because you're either in savior mode, which you can't make logical decisions from, or you're
mm.
compromising and then perhaps a little bit resentful on you giving it up, like as opposed to everyone having a piece of the pie and creating more opportunities. So it's not a zero
Yeah,
sum game, and that's kind of what I think we sometimes have to train ourselves out of thinking.
totally. I'm curious what your take is on hiring generalists. What do you see in the market? What have you what's your take there?
I am such a generalist. I actually have gone down a research project recently where I was interviewing employees, like first hires at Series A companies, and also founders at these companies. And it was a fascinating conversation for me because I have not shared these findings publicly, so this is the first time I'm going to share them. Which is that I found a little bit of a mismatch in what the founders and what the employees knew to be true.
Okay.
The founders said that they very much hire for the generalist skill set, okay, which surprised me a little bit because they're looking for generalists when the company's at this inflection point of growing a lot, of figuring out the product market fit, of like you need people that can step in and do absolutely anything. Like they can lead marketing, they can hire people, they can build ops documents, all of that. But what the founders then shared with me, and this was pretty consistent in the conversations that I had, was as the company starts growing, we really need specialists. You need specialists that understand the industry, that understand the function, and can take ownership and grow it. But there's like the points in time where like you need people that are like, I have no problem doing whatever. Like the biggest ability a generalist has is to figure it out. To be like, I don't know if I know the answer, but I know how to find the answer out.
Sure.
And whereas the employee side, I think, was this this sort of, I don't think they even fully own the fact that they have this ability and that's why they were hired. It wasn't luck. It wasn't, being at the right time at the right place and knowing the right person or a fluke. They were hired because they have that ability to step in and take any role. But then it's up to them on whether they want to just go do this again at another company that is at this cool inflection point, or if they want to become a specialist. So in terms of the trend in the market, obviously we're seeing a lot of innovation and a lot of companies popping up right now, especially with AI. And I think that the generalist skill set in the beginning is like what everyone needs. Like you need people that can own a lot of different departments before the departments exist. And then once they set them up, they can hire the people that can take it to the next level.
It's so fascinating, and I wonder how much this is going to shift over the next few years because totally, I've heard this so many times. There's like this old saying, which is like, startups are built by generalists and scaled by specialists. It's like this is kind of this like industry like lore. And I think what is an interesting shift is that teams are becoming so much smaller. With AI, you can do so much more with less headcount. So, what does that mean for org design? What does that mean for how you structure and scale your teams? I think it's going to be incredibly different.
Yeah, I totally agree. And even just, thinking about what are the skills skills. I mean, even as generalists, we all have skills that are trained and the things that we learn and invest time in. But what are the skills that we should invest in now that are going to serve us even 5 years down the road? And I think everything is changing so fast. Like,
That's a great question. I would ask you that question. What skills are you thinking about investing in?
yeah, I think that's a great question. And to me, I think that just going back to AI influencing things, it's like, okay, like what is the human touch in experiences? And the human touch in experiences is, to me, it's like that ability to feel, like emotionally to feel and to tell good stories and to ask good questions. I am trained as a coach, and I think that I leverage that in the work that I do by knowing when someone needs advice versus when they just need space. And it's really doubling down on that skill set of just being like, okay, like how do we really slow down and make space for the human experience? Because AI is just going to make us do stuff faster, but like we get to slow down and like really enjoy what we're building.
How do you think coaching will shift, or will it shift in the next few years with the rise of AI? What's the role of coaches in all of this?
Yeah, I think that it's a kind of two-pronged answer. I think that um, the what AI is going to tell you is just a direct reflection of the kind of prompts that you give it. And so if someone is not self-aware and is using AI as a coach, they're not going to get the depth of answers that a human can get you to because they can ask the right probing questions. And so I think coaches are still going to be very much needed. But I do think that as you get more, like, say, like, you've worked with a coach and a therapist for like a decade, and you know your patterns, you're pretty self-aware, and you start training your AI, I think that humans are still going to be needed for that empathy piece and for that really like holding that space. But I think that AI is going to be really cool in being able to help get you out of your whatever is happening in the moment. It's kind of like that coach in your back pocket on demand, like that you can just be like, hey, like I feel stuck or I feel really anxious, like, and it'll give you like a quick mental break. It's almost like taking like Advil or ibuprofen to like mitigate your headache. Like it's like masking the symptoms. You can go back to a coach or a therapist.
Ooh, interesting. I wonder. So I got really deep into like the art of questioning this year. I read this book actually recommended by Robert in the community called A More Beautiful Question,
Oh,
and it's fantastic for anyone who wants to think more about questions. And it completely opened my mind to like, wow, a good question is a door. A good question is a door into so many possibilities. And I wonder, from your coaching, do you have any kind of favorite questions that either help open a door for people or help them see themselves differently, or can be a starting point? Maybe this could be helpful for listeners to kind of journal with or sit with.
yeah. One of my favorite questions is, when someone says like, "Oh, I can't do this," or "I'm worried about this," is us asking the question, "Is this true?" And it's like, no, 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 slow down. Like, do you know with full 100%, no questions asked certainty that this is true, that this belief, this fear is true? Because when you start showing yourself evidence of all the ways it's not true, you start realizing what you're holding on to, and like the foundation of your belief starts crumbling. So it's a really powerful question that I learned from my coaching training. Actually, I did a year-long coaching program, and then one of the other ones that I think is really powerful in the right situations and circumstances is the Byron Katie's four questions. And obviously really powerful to do it with somebody else leading those questions, but you don't even need to say anything. Like you just ask the four questions as you're
What
mirroring
are
holding
they?
space
I'm
for
not
something.
familiar.
Um, let me look it up so I don't mess it up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but um, so the thing is called the week. Um, and the first question is, so I'm just gonna make up a hypothetical situation, right? So like you say like, oh, like my husband is very like he never understands when I need space to work on something. Just hypothetically, just making it up. And then your questions are the first is it true? The second is, can you absolutely know it's true? The third is, um, how do you react and what happens when you know what? Yeah, how do you react and what happens when you believe that thought? And the fourth is, who would you be without this thought?
Ooh.
Yeah. So the way that this works, right, is that you think about it and you answer these questions, but then you also do turnarounds and you like bring it back on yourself. And so it's a really quick exercise, but it helps you take ownership of how you are being when you're buying into this belief. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, I just think that like in terms of limiting beliefs, it's just really powerful to start with, is this true? And then you start with the ownership of like, how is this not true?
Oh, I love it. That's a fantastic tip. I'm going to steal that slash use it and
Please,
spread
please
it.
do.
Is this
Please do.
true? Is this true? So fantastic. Okay, I want to get into some of your predictions.
Okay.
Do you have anything on your mind that you're seeing from your lens, from your perspective, that you're kind of expecting in the next 12 to 24 months?
Is there anything that I am seeing? So, okay, no, I won't get super political, but I will just say this is about politics for a minute. I think that one thing that I had a feeling about was as that like when stuff happens that you don't politically agree with, it is a catalyst for change. And I think that a lot of what is happening around the world is so upsetting on so many levels. Um, and there's two possible ways of dealing with it. The first is, and they're both valid, and we can even each buy into both. Sometimes you're like, I need to protect myself. I'm just gonna turn all of this off and go into my cocoon because I cannot deal. It's making me so upset. And the second is, this is making me so upset, I need to do something about it. So I'm either going to start something, or I'm going to partner with someone, or I'm just going to donate um, to a cause that is tackling this because I don't have the energy to deal with it. So that's definitely one where I felt like ever since, kind of at least the US election, a lot of people have been wanting to get more involved in activism and in causes that they really care about. The second thing that is not related to this is related to AI, and we were talking about before, is this idea of like hyper independence, like being like, oh, we can more solopreneurs are going to really start taking over because we can't have like AI agents doing pretty much everything. However, I think that that also means that communities are going to flourish because people are not meant to work alone, and they're like, we feel lonely, like just sitting on our desks in our houses by ourselves, and we need groups and people that like really fundamentally agree on who we are and the kind of world that we want to see. So those are my two.
That's awesome. And yeah, I think communities, I'm already seeing it, that there is this huge craving and a real pull for people coming together.
Yes.
So that's a fantastic segue into GW. I would love to hear what your experience has been like since you have been a part of the GW community.
I love GW so much. Like, and I genuinely mean that. No, I genuinely mean that. Um, One of the biggest things for me with GW has been that, there are some communities where there's so much going on every single day that you just absolutely cannot keep up with it. And I think that GW is just the right amount of chatter.
Chaos.
Just the right amount of chaos where I feel like I don't miss too many messages. But I can participate, and it doesn't feel like it's completely quiet for days. Like there's always something going on, but it isn't like I'm not waking up to like 100 missed messages. There's no way I'm gonna do that. So it's just the right amount. And I think what is really kind of to that point, it's like it's very much built to be a community, and especially with your commitment to making it a lifelong community, of taking the FOMO away of being like, if I don't participate now and get to know everyone now, I'm gonna miss my opportunity. And it's really just allowing me to lean into the season of like, oh, this week I feel super energized. Let me connect with a few different people. And like, another week being like, I am completely swamped, like I do not have time to even log into Slack, but I know that these people are awesome and they're always going to be there, and I'm just going to let them know that maybe we can connect next week. So I think that it's been an awesome community. I have obviously I am hosting a dinner party with one of our awesome GW members, Rachel. And yeah, it's just so cool. And I like met up with somebody else from GW over drinks, and um, I have a fun GW story for you for after the recording, just because I'm not quite ready for it to be on recording yet. Um,
Okay.
right after, and then maybe if it works out, we can record a part two and be like, hey, this is what I was talking about. Um, yeah, I just think that people, I mean, and like on like a financial sense, I just feel like it was like the best to be. I mean, I'm being completely honest, it was such an awesome investment because people have hired me from it. They've opened doors for me, and hopefully I have done the same for them, that they know that I will always, does this inherent trust and connection, that if somebody from GW wants to be connected to someone, an opportunity that I'm connected with, I would very much endorse them because I trust that they're all the things that you are wanting GW to be and GW members to be. And when I was first researching GW, I asked one of our mutual friends, Katie, what she thought of GW, and she said that Millie is very committed to building a beautiful community, and that's what it is. And I would agree with that. It is a really really special place because it just feels like it's just authentic in a way that I haven't found a lot of other communities, which and this is like every community is needed because they're serving the people that are meant for it. But a lot of other communities feel a little bit transactional, like people are coming to sell something, to validate an idea, to do something, to find a business that they can invest in, whatever it is, and then they're out or disengaged at the very least. And I feel like GW just feels a little bit more like a family where we're very supportive of each other. And like one of the GW members got a job recently, and I felt like all of us won because she had been sharing her trials and tribulations on there for months. Like we were all looking at her resume and giving her feedback, and I don't know, it just feels a little bit um like I haven't even met that many people in Boston, but it just feels like I have a bunch of coworkers that I'm slowly getting to know over time, and will always be connected with in some way.
Ah, that was so cool. I'm so glad I asked that question.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I mean, I am a huge advocate for journalist world, and I am so grateful for just your commitment of being very intentional with the kind of space that you're creating. Yeah.
It's a pleasure. It's honestly a pleasure. I can't believe I get to call at work. It's so much. It brings me a lot of joy and a lot of meaning.
But hey, Mel, we're still
Yeah.
waiting to own a part of GW. We
Yeah,
still.
someone asked me yesterday, they're like, when is the crowd fund? And like, transparently, um, I am so keen to figure this out. And what I've been doing is I've actually been behind the scenes chatting to other founders who have done a crowd fund. And my big takeaway is that it takes a lot of work and
Yes.
it will take a big chunk of my time, our time. And so it's finding this timing, really, the window of the campaign to be like, okay, this is going to be Millie's like focus, and for the next little bit, like we are chock a block full, but know that the seed is planted. it seems inevitable. Like it seems like this is something that the community deeply wants and would really rally behind. So I think watch this space, likely next year.
I think it's like it's like our brand, like we're such a co-op.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Keto, we are coming to the end, but I want to make sure that you have space. If there is something that I didn't ask you, or if you wanted to talk about, you've got the mic.
Oh, thank you so much. I think you were awesome, and I don't think there's really anything else. And I really think, that that we're all works in progress. In like
Mm,
and I think the biggest thing that I see with myself and with clients is that sometimes it's okay to change our minds. Like a lot of people that I work with are I work both ways. Like I worked with former really incredible leaders at companies that decided that they want to start their portfolio careers. And I've helped them do that. And I've also helped former entrepreneurs get a full time role again. And I think it's like a season of life. It's not like what we do is not a definition of who we are.
yeah.
Um, and I almost think like portfolio careers are not like what you're doing in any given moment. It's how you're thinking about your career. That I'm not going to sit here and build this like corporate ladder, but I'm going to lean into things and causes and ideas that I'm interested in, and like work with really awesome, incredible people, contribute my skills, but also learn from them, both like tactically and also in who they are.
Mm,
And I just think it's
no, I think that's really going to resonate for the listeners of this pod. I know it definitely resonates for me. So thank you so much. We're going to link all of your links in the show notes so people can get in touch and say hello. And I really appreciate you coming on, taking the time.
I appreciate you, Millie. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.